to whom it may concern. For the past few weeks, a chain letter promoting OK Soda has run on local TV. Despite a huge outpouring of support, there have been detractors, notably Americans mad about OK. They have compared our campaign to a virus and to the notorious kudzu plant, creeping everywhere, strangling all it touches, needing only dirt to survive. To this, we can only offer the following response. Things are going to be okay.
History never repeats. Tell myself before I go to sleep. Don't say the words you might regret. I lost before, you know I can't forget.
Welcome, history nerds, to Geek Salad, episode 239. Hey, I remember that. The movie. I'm Andy.
I'm Mike.
I'm Joe.
I'm Catherine.
And we are talking tonight about something that we had, I feel has been gestating for a while. I know I've been recommending it for quite a bit. But tonight we are talking about historical events, people, things, pop culture stuff that really deserves its own dramatic interpretation, but has not yet had it. So what we're going to do is we are going to come up with our own. Just like last episode, we are going to pitch some amazing movies and TV shows based on stuff that has not already had a dramatic interpretation of it. So we had we had some pretty good feedback here. So I want to kick into our feedback first, and I'm going to start with our good friend Dave McLean. So Dave says he's got two. He's got a comedy and he's got a drama on here. So for drama, the fall of the Antoine Wall. The Romans get their asses kicked by the Scots and are forced to retreat. I think that would make a pretty good show.
Yeah.
What kind of wall?
The Antoine Wall. It was a wall, probably in the British Isles. Now keep in mind that the Romans were able to take Britannia, but they weren't able to take Ireland or Scotland. So this is kind of...
I always thought it was called Hadrian's Wall.
Well, this one is the Antoine Wall.
It's a different wall.
Ah, okay.
And then
the Romans loved building walls in the British Isles.
Yeah,
they did. And many of them still stand today.
Yes, they do.
And then for comedy, we have the making of Star Wars, a movie that looks like an absolute train wreck the whole way through. It ends up being a classic. Include the romance between Fisher and Ford.
I almost made that on my list, but nah.
Well, yeah.
Well, there was so much drama surrounding the making of Star Wars that even like a lighthearted look at it would probably be pretty entertaining.
Yeah. Dave actually writes... Go ahead, Joe.
No, go ahead. No, I was just going to say, like a comedy of errors would be like perfect.
Right. Dave says, I think you could do a pretty good dramedy just using the anecdotes. I know off the top of my head, even better than if you did your research. The fun part would be casting people like George Lucas and Carrie Fisher and Alec Guinness. Peter Capaldi should play Alec Guinness. Of that, I am positive.
Yeah, I can see it.
That would be an interesting one because you have like this prim and proper Shakespearean actor, and having to say things like "the Force would be with you." Yeah.
Well, also, I had recommended to him too that I can imagine a rough cut screening of the film ending with a scene reminiscent of the audience scene from the Springtime for Hitler number and the producers, where everyone's just sitting there after that rough cut ends, and their mouths are just hanging open with how terrible it is. Dave does right, though, about the Antoine Wall. I would make it a story where the whole thing tips on something small but tragic, like the murder of a local Scottish girl that a Roman centurion has to solve that tips the balance of power. So it's pretty good stuff there. Yeah. So we had that was from Dave. Thank you so much, Dave. From Facebook, our friend Eric Wolpert says, I know nothing of the Silk Road. That was the way the West was connected to China. Also, Marco Polo. I don't recall any movies about his adventures, at least not recently. I also find The City of Petra very intriguing, too. For the U.S., I realize there's a ton of whitewashing of what we learned in school. The Tulsa riots, for example. Another crazy story is an actual coup in Wilmington, North Carolina. A black man was elected to serve public office, and the entire existing city, country government would not allow him to take his role and install their own choice. For New England history, Great Molasses flood of Boston. Bronson Potter from Mason, New Hampshire, successfully sued Kodak for patent infringement, became a hermit, and ultimately lost his pilot's license as he flew a single-engine plane under the tallest railroad trestle in New Hampshire at the time in Greenville.
Oh,
that's
geez.
quite a stupid thing. Now, I know that there have been several Marco Polo things. I think most of them were claptrap, though. I'm fairly certain Richard Chamberlain played Marco Polo at some point.
Well, there was a recent one miniseries on, I want to say Netflix.
Okay.
Called Marco Polo.
That's certainly possible. I don't know. At some point, they just blend together.
Yeah.
So we had that. We also had a few others from Facebook as well. Let me pull those up here. So we've got Adam Carreri, who says the Battle of Trafalgar, which I'm a nerd for British naval battles, so I don't think I've ever seen that done. Adam also brings up the naval battles of Iron Bottom Sound. Brian Mixter brings up the Battle of Yorktown, because Brian does reenactments.
Yeah.
Bill Horman brings up Benjamin Waite and Martha Leonard Waite, Hatfield, Massachusetts. Their true story reads like fiction. And I asked Bill to give me a little more information about this. And essentially, what I found out was that in the 17th century, Martha, who was the wife of Benjamin, and another woman were kidnapped by Native Americans. And they had to go through this arduous task of rescuing them. So it's pretty interesting. We've got our friend Steve Day, who brings up a period in history between the fall of communism and 9/11, when Gen X collectively thought, world peace is now permanent. We're never going to have a generational trauma. This sucks. Do you remember that? Do you guys remember when we were the generation that didn't know war? And the second they proclaimed that, the first Desert Storm happened?
Oh, my God, yeah.
My mother-in-law, Janet, also brings up New England Historical Society highlights some intriguing stories that would make for some interesting media material. Thank you, Janet. So going on to our 10 account, the app formerly known as Twitter. We've got Triv at Trivial Theater, who says it's supposed to be coming out, but has been trapped in development hell for years now. But the story of H.H. Holmes during the 1839 Chicago World's Fair is crazy. And if you know, you guys familiar with H.H. Holmes?
Oh, is that?
No.
Was that the one that that Leonardo DiCaprio was behind? It was like the first
I don't know if it was
serial killer.
Yeah, he built a murder house.
Yeah, it was the one that.
Yeah.
Yeah, like Texas Chainsaw Massacre was based on him.
How has a movie not been made about this guy?
It's just trapped.
They did do. I'm pretty sure there was a TV version of the book Devil in the White City.
Yeah.
Okay.
I'm pretty sure they made a move something about that.
Yeah, the closest I've seen a bunch of like those really shitty, cheap-looking documentaries that show up on Amazon Prime that are like 15 years old. But the closest thing I've seen to anything with H.H. Holmes was actually like a fictionalized version of a kind of H.H. Holmes character, and it was on the hotel season of American Horror Story. Mm-hmm. Played by Evan Peters, because that guy can't not play a serial killer.
Apparently not.
I know Leonardo DiCaprio has been trying to get that one made for a while now.
It's an intriguing story. I mean, it would be terrifying. And the thing is, too, is that they could make it with all the gore. And what I've gleaned from horror nerds on Twitter is that they're all nuts. They are a different breed of person. It really, truly is like, wow, you guys you really love your horror, don't you?
They are not well in the head.
So, and we also have one from Nightmare Now, which is at Nightmare Now Pod. The Battle of Castle Eider at the end of Western Front, World War II, needs to be a movie. In short, this old Austrian castle has been converted to a Nazi prison for political prisoners. USA takes it over, then team up with the surrendering German guards to repel an SS tank division. It's wild.
Oh, I've heard that story. That would be so good.
I would love to see, and that's big theater. That's a big theatrical movie.
Yeah, that's like Saving Private Ryan levels of epic.
Hey, so we had a few late responses that I'd be remiss if I didn't go back in time and throw into our discussion. The first comes from our friend Brian Dermody in response to Brian Mixter bringing up Battle of Yorktown. Brian Dermody says, if we were in that era, I'd always thought the Knox Artillery Train would be a dope miniseries. We have Jesse Olson, who says Bathsheba Spooner, the Dabbsville community in Gloucester in the early 20th century would make an interesting American Downton Abbey-esque drama. Also, she mentions Quock Walker. And Chris Moreira brings up the Falklands War, the invasion of Grenada, the Iran-Contra scandal. Interesting, we've never actually gotten a dramatization of the Iran-Contra scandal. So, well, that's it for the feedback that I had to go back in time to get, and I hope I can get out of here before I run into future me and collapse the entire time-space continuum. Absolutely. So that is all of the social media feedback I got. Did anybody get any?
Mm-mm.
Nope.
Okay, well let's move on then, because we have our own that we all want to talk about. So what I'm going to do is we're all going to roundtable this. As you're describing it, also let me know, where do you see it showing? Is it a theatrical movie? Is it like a streaming movie? Is it a streaming TV show or miniseries? Let me know. So who wants to go first?
Why don't you head us off, Andy?
Yeah.
Okay, I will get us started then, and I am going to start with Electric Boogaloo, The Charmed Life of Menachem Golan and Canaan Films.
Our agent Marty Baum said, look, if you guys want to just go make a film and be totally left alone, there are two new guys in town.
Menachem Golan and Yoram Globus were the heavyweights. They were the George Foremans and the Muhammad Alis of the indie market.
Canon is the only company who loves cinema. Cinema is our life.
Yoram Globus was the businessman behind the movie making.
Where is my money? You promise and promise and promise and you're not paying.
Menachem Golan was the movie maker.
Menachem, I cannot do it. I'm dying. I said, do it and then die.
I just had in my head what a movie producer should be, and Menachem just didn't quite fit that picture.
So, if you've ever seen the documentary, which by the way is free on Netflix right now, Electric Boogaloo, the story of Cannon Films.
It is bonkers.
My God. So Cannon Films was like, they were literally around for the 80s, from 1980 to 1989. They started off, Menachem Golan was a producer and a director out in Israel. And he loved movies. There's a quote that he had about, he would never make money doing movies because the only thing he had left was his wife and kids, and if he could mortgage them to make a movie, he probably would do that. And he just insane. So when he came to the States to produce movies, he and his cousin, whose first name I can't remember, but the last name is Globus. That's where you get the name Golan and Globus from. As a production team. They started making like historical titty films. So the Emmanuel movies, they were doing the Emmanuel movies, and they loved Sylvia Kristel so much that they put her to Lady Chatterley's lover, even though she was at the time a horrendous drug addict, and all they did was Menahem would describe to his director just, okay, she go into a room, she fuck, and then she go into this room, she fuck. And watching the documentary, it's just listening to these people just doing this impression of just this exuberant man. I mean, he's a big guy, and just talking about these high hopes that he had for these movies that just had no chance in hell of succeeding. But he always went in with the best of intentions. So my thought was, for this movie, I want it kind of in the style of Weird, the Weird Al Yankovic story, where nothing is really correct. He's just kind of walking through life where everything in his views, everything works out perfectly. He's walking through the set. Women are like, Menahem, I have something to ask you. And he'll go, yes, what is it? And a woman will like open up her shirt, like, do these look okay? Oh, yes. And then he'd just go and do something else. But mainly focusing on some of the, not so much the bigger hits, but the more infamous films that he did. Yeah.
So you're saying kind of like a more comedic version of Ed Wood, but set in the 80s?
Kind of, yeah. I mean, Ed Wood, that movie made Ed Wood to be like this wild-eyed optimist, and I think that would be perfect. But I would like to focus on, after they buy Canon Films, they pick up a distribution deal with MGM to make bigger and better movies. So Sahara was a movie that they really wanted to make, and it was part Lawrence of Arabia, part the Great Race. And it was dreadful. But he had high hopes that it was going to be a big Academy Award winner. He actually said, I think Brooke Shields is going to win Best Actress for this movie.
Yeah, okay.
And in the documentary, they got Alex Winter, who's just like, Brooke Shields is Best Actress. But doing that, then showing a success they did have in Breakin', and then immediately fucking the whole thing up by doing Breakin' 2, Electric Boogaloo immediately after. Like, Breakin' made a ton of money.
Yeah.
Breakin' 2 did not. And then going into the issues they had when they made the movie Bolero with Bo and John Derek, where they had given them so much money and they hated the project so much that they blamed the Derricks for it. We're going to sue them. And then gaining the rights to Superman 4, where that was at the point where you could watch a movie and tell the exact moment they ran out of money on the screen.
Oh, yeah.
So going to when they paid Sylvester Stallone $12 million for Over the Top, and then eventually Golden Globus splitting up. But beforehand, they both had knowledge of a new dance craze called the Lambada, and they each put out a movie in the same year. There was Lambada, and there was the Forbidden Dance.
Oh my God, I had forgotten about the Lambada craze.
Yeah, and that's the thing. But it's narrated by him as the most, wide-eyed, optimistic thing in the world.
And And it had to be in the most earnest way possible, like no self-awareness of what he actually is.
You see the truth kind of coming out on screen, but still make it anachronistic enough, because this was a wild story. I highly recommend you watch the documentary, but yeah. I would love to see this. Steve Day and I both watched Electric Boogaloo around the same time, and we're both like, I need a movie about this man. I truly need a movie about this lunatic.
Amazingly enough, he never did cocaine.
I know. And the other thing, too, is that he would sell studios on like giving him the money for the movies by they had posters. And like, okay, well, we've got this movie and we've got this person attached to it. They would give them the money and they would produce the movie based on the money that they got from just kind of selling the premise of the poster. These are also the same guys that promised Michael Dudikoff he was going to be Spider-Man.
Oh, yeah. Man, I mean, seeing the double G of their logo was like a staple of a Friday night after a trip to the rental place.
I would love to see a montage too of all of these movies kind of like stacked on top of each other, where there is just like so much gratuitous violence and ninjas and boobs and comedy and Charles Bronson coming out with like military grade weapons in the latter Death Wish movies, where essentially it was like Charles Bronson is in Death Wish 4, Crack City, the city made of crack. Charles Bronson goes into the city of nothing but minority stereotypes. He's going to crack down on crack.
They also made the MST3K classic starring Kathy Ireland, Alien from L.A.
Jesus Christ.
Yeah.
Hey, she lost her glasses. She's pretty now.
Still got that squeaky ass voice though.
But that's my first pick. What do you guys think? Is that a buy? Would you buy that? Would you produce that if you had the money?
Yeah, I wouldn't mind seeing that.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm in.
Catherine is very quiet now.
I would make it as outrageous as possible. Take all the true elements and just like turn them up to 11.
Exactly. And a failure to everybody else is a success in his eyes. And I don't know. Did any of you guys actually see Weird?
I have not seen Weird yet. I have to get to that.
Not yet.
Yeah. Have a Roku. We really do need to get together at some point and watch it. But
apparently I can watch it for free on Roku. I don't have to pay for it. So.
Oh, lovely. Yeah, it's so tongue in cheek, and you know that not everything happened. Not everything is presented the way it really happened. And that's what I want.
Yeah, Weird Al did a parody of biopics.
Yeah, it's a biography about a problematic person. But it's based on the life of a very unproblematic human being. So, all right. So, who wants to go next?
I'll go next. I'll start off with. I like to call this movie "Movies and Puppets," and basically a biopic. Catherine.
I've heard it pronounced both ways.
I know. I was just teasing.
I've been trying to get back to biopic, which is how most people pronounce it. After somebody tried to drill into me to pronounce it biopic.
Yeah,
interesting.
Biopic makes it sound like it's made of chemicals.
I like that.
And biopic makes it make it sound like you have a problem with your eyes. So neither is good.
But Movies and Puppets, a biopic about Joel Hodgson. Start with his stand-up comedian days. And goes up to when he leaves MST3K, and possibly with an epilogue of when he gets it back.
It wasn't like, we've got this array of 22 shows. Let's survey them all. We really want to send off Joel with a fantastic movie. No, it just was. It could have been any movie. It just happened to be Mitchell.
Maybe have another actor playing him as the younger self, but in the epilogue, when he gets MST3K back, it's actually Joel himself, if he's still around at this point. But just seeing him, doing his stand-up comedian on SNL, on David Letterman, his hatred of who is that prop comic?
Gallagher.
Well, yeah, his hatred of Gallagher.
No, Carrot Top.
Carrot Top.
Yes.
Oh.
And then how he's developing the idea of MST3K and the building the puppets, and the crumbling of the relationship between him and Jim Mallon. I just think it'd be really interesting. You could do it kind of tongue in cheek, but I kind of prefer a little bit more serious one.
Yeah.
His terrible politics.
Oh, I didn't realize that Joel had terrible politics.
I knew Mike wasn't great with politics, but I didn't know about Joel.
Oh.
Mm-hmm.
Oh.
But you either die a hero or live long enough to become the villain.
Exactly. Thank you, Harvey Dent.
But But yeah, I had a feeling this one would probably be Roku because it's not. It would be more of a niche type thing. And obviously because it's MST3K, MST3K is very, 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 very popular, but not really widespread in a sense. It's kind of both at the same time.
It relishes in its cult status.
Yes, very much so. So that's why I think Roku, because Weird Al Yankovic, yeah, he's like multi-Grammy award winning, but he's still kind of a cult artist in a sense. So I think this one kind of would fly in the similar vein.
Yeah. I like that idea. I would like to see it, but I would like to see it on the more serious end.
Mm. Yeah. The making of my favorite show.
Nice. No, yeah, there's that. I like that a lot.
That.
All right. What do we say on this one? I would subscribe to Roku if I didn't already have one to watch this.
Joe,
yeah.
I think it definitely has to be I don't think that it would have enough legs to be a theatrical release.
Oh, absolutely.
Just because it's such a niche product. So yeah, I would definitely would want the streaming services.
Yeah.
Yeah. Cool.
Yeah. Nice.
Right. Well, Joe, what's yours? I know that Catherine only has one, so I want to savor that one.
Okay. All right. So for my first pitch, this is a. Well, okay. Let me throw the pitch out there, and then I'll give it an explanation.
Let's run around the flagpole and see who salutes, right?
Right. So the name of the picture, and this is just the working title. It's called The Faithless Virginian. A historical period drama. It tells the story of General George Henry Thomas, who fought on the side of the Union despite his aristocratic Virginia roots, and he has the distinction of not having lost any engagement where he was in command. He played decisive roles in many of the war's pivotal battles, and during his efforts during the disastrous Battle of Chickamauga, he effectively saved the Army of the Cumberland and therefore saved the Union. But despite all his military powers, he faced discrimination and constant questioning from his superiors and his compatriots in the Union Army, and questioning his loyalty due to being effectively from the capital of the Confederacy. So what brought this up is, I think throughout history, ever since the end of Reconstruction, history has really tilted, and a majority of the country has really bought into the lost cause bullshit of the Confederacy.
When William Rosecrans, the Union Army commander, fled the field, Thomas remained behind, fighting on alone with his men against the whole Reb army, badly outnumbered and outflanked. And this holding action single-handedly saved the Army of the Cumberland from complete destruction. And 2 months later, United States forces would get their revenge at the Battle of Missionary Ridge, where Thomas and William Tecumseh Sherman orchestrated a frontal attack on the Confederate center that shattered their lines, and those lines, might I add, were entrenched on high ground. And then, in December 1864, Thomas faced off against John Bell Hood, who sucks, by the way, in the Battle of Nashville, and destroyed his army. That's not hyperbole. He literally destroyed it. The Army of the Tennessee was laid low. Its ruin smote upon the mountainside. There would be no more large-scale fighting west of the Appalachians for the remainder of the war.
Where there's this belief that the only reason the North won was overwhelming numbers and because the North was industrialized, while the South was, the Southern generals were gentlemen warriors who fought with honor and fought for a righteous cause, which is absolute bullshit.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
But
also that it was about tariffs and not slavery, even though in their declaration they said slavery and they say anything about the terrorists. And if they'd stayed in the government, they could have voted against it.
That's we all know the truth and everything else like that. But a lot of the folk, ever since Reconstruction with the lost cause myth, we've seen a lot of valorization of Southern generals like Robert Lee, and you see military bases named after, a lot of people know who Southern generals are, Stonewall Jackson, Nathan Bedford Forrest, Hood, General Lee, and a lot of the Northern generals outside of U.S. Grant and Sherman aren't really well known.
Right.
So there's this myth that the Southern generals were better military generals than the North. And there's this creator on YouTube that I love to watch called Aten Shea Films. Mm-hmm. And he has this series called Checkmate Lincolnites, where he basically he plays two characters. He plays Johnny Reb, a Confederate soldier, and Billy Yank, a Union soldier, and they basically he tears apart in a very funny way. He tears apart all the lost cause myth. He disassembles it piece by piece. And he had one episode where the question was, did the South really have better generals? And categorically, the answer is no. The Union had way better generals than the South did. And one of them was this gentleman, George Henry Thomas. He came from like I said, an aristocratic Virginia family. His family owned slaves, and he made no secret about it. But he was disgusted by it after the slave rebellion of Nate's Rebellion. I think it was 1811 or 1813. But it changed his mind, and he was a Unionist through and through. He wanted to save the Union, and throughout, he is considered one of the best generals ever in U.S. military history. But because he was a humble man, he destroyed all his wartime correspondence. He didn't write any memoir. He was rare among generals from the Civil War that he did not write any memoirs whatsoever. He didn't want any of the acknowledgement or glory that came from being a general. He just wanted to do his job, and when the job was over, he just wanted to go and disappear. And you see a lot of Civil War movies offer a really sanitized version of what really happened in the Civil War. Yeah. And again, a lot of the big Civil War movies all really take that lost cause myth and kind of run with it. So if you see Gods and Generals and Gettysburg and all this, they you hear
love letter to the Confederacy, and that's. I'm sorry to interrupt you, Joe.
That's the thing.
It's something that I hate about Civil War movies is that they take the side of the Confederacy as this romantic.
Exactly.
There was a romantic cause.
But glory is the exception to the rule, Catherine. If you look at the history of Civil War movies, they are generally going back to A Birth of a Nation, and we all know what that is. Generally, they lean very heavily on the lost cause myth and take that's why when you watch Civil War movies, you see the Southern generals with these soaring, lilting accents and just and meanwhile the Northerners are just like thugs.
Yeah, you don't see Ulysses S. Grant portrayed in a movie without him taking a swig out of his flask because yes, he was a horrendous alcoholic, but
right. Well, he saved it. He was a brilliant general, and that's the thing. Yeah. And this movie would not shy away from one. And the other thing you see is that these Civil War movies, aside from Glory, are very sanitized. They don't show the horrors that was the Civil War. So this movie would show the Civil War was not, brothers and two brothers having a fist fight. It was they were going for each other's throats and slashing them. But you'd also have the conflict of the Southern general from Virginia, from the Confederacy, fighting on the sides of the Union. So he's got his own personal conflicts with those around him, as well as his Southern compatriots.
Yeah.
Now I can see it as maybe, like a 2.5 hour, 3 hour epic. If you just want to focus on just the man and his personal journey from being an aristocratic Virginian gentleman to Gettysburg, or a mini series where you not only do you see his personal journey, but also the epic battles that he took in, because he was a badass. He destroyed a lot of Southern armies.
I know, that sounds pretty cool.
Yeah, I like that. I do like that a lot. I would sit and watch that. I would pause because my ass can't take unless it's like a Lord of the Rings or Endgame. I need to get up every once in a while.
Yeah, I can see it I can see it as a trilogy. I mean, but it has to be like epic and big in scope.
Yeah,
and not shy away from the truth of what was the Civil War.
And you wouldn't see that on TNT, because TNT is the perpetrator of the, we've
gods and generals. It's perpetrator of gods and generals.
Yeah, no, I'd see it as like, we want the kind of brutality of war that we got from Braveheart.
Yeah,
and
right. I want to see 13-year-old kids' lower legs getting blown off because of a cannonball came skipping through them.
Right, kind of like The Patriot.
Yeah. If I want a Mel Gibson type director without the problematic Mel Gibson,
because Mel Gibson's going to whitewash the hell out of it. So
exactly,
not him, but somebody.
Not what I want.
And on the line right now, we got Mel Gibson's father, Hudson Gibson, on here. He's going to tell you the Confederacy was misunderstood, and.
And by the way, if you want to see, like I said, I would highly recommend watching the Aten Shea YouTube channel for Checkmate Licking Nights, because it's very entertaining and he does a great job of like taking apart the Lost Cause myth.
I love that. That, Joe, out of everything, you had me at the Lost Cause myth, because that is something that's always driven me nuts about.
Oh, me too. Oh, yeah.
This is the Civil War. Cool. All right. Well, let's. I'm in on that. You guys in on that one?
Yeah, definitely.
If I were into war movies, I'd be in on that, but I'm not. That's the only reason I'm not in.
Gotcha.
That's fair.
All right. So, the next one on my list then is 40. I entitled it 40 Elephants, and I'm thinking about this as like a streaming series, like on Hulu or Amazon. And it takes inspiration from the style of shows like Harlots and The Great, where it's a period piece, but there's a lot of anachronisms built into it, including the music. So the 40 Elephants were a criminal ring of thieves who were pretty much the scourge of London in the late 19th century and early parts of the 20th century.
In the late 19th century, nefarious gangs ruled the streets of London, but one stood out above the rest: the 40 Elephants, London's all-female organization. Contemporaries of the real-life Peaky Blinders, these women were expert shoplifters, and their queen, Diamond Annie, ran the outfit with ruthless precision.
So what happened was they would start out as they would dress up as ladies' maids, and they would go to stores and they would steal, because they're in there to like shop for their quote unquote their mistresses, but they would just steal. And then every once in a while they would go into like wealthy people's homes dressed as servants and rob the houses blind. And then as they stepped up and stepped up and stepped up, they could afford to buy more elaborate outfits, so they could go into jewelry stores and higher end merchandise dressed up of ladies of leisure. and no one would bother them because it never occurred to anybody that a well-dressed woman could just be robbing them just under their noses. And it was a criminal ring that was first led by Mary Carr, and then eventually like Alice Diamond, who went by Diamond Annie. And I think what I would like to see this as, with a lot of like that, it's factual up to a point, but have a power struggle towards the end where Mary Carr is losing control of the 40 elephants to Diamond Annie, and there's just a group of just British women who have their own designs to maybe try to go straight, or they have difficulty following the rules where they weren't allowed to drink on days, and they had to have boyfriends that were kind of vetted by their bosses to make sure that they weren't cops or anything. And it seems to me like that would be a really cool thing. I actually saw a piece on this on the YouTube channel Weird History, and I'm like, that would make a hell of a show. Because if you've seen especially Harlots is it's late 19th century London about this brothel and these women that are struggling to maintain control of their brothel, because there's a higher end brothel where they have to deal with shakedowns from that and the law. And I think it's pretty cool. And I think that this would make a really fun series.
I like it. I like it because I like the idea of showing 19th century women in a different light, especially in English, in English society.
Yeah.
That doesn't show them as just plain harlots or as kind of, meek. But my concern would be, how do you not make this a female version of Peaky Blinders?
Well, that's the thing. First of all, I've never watched Peaky Blinders. The only reason I know of Peaky Blinders is because every dude that wants to make themselves feel, like sound hard and, uncaring to the weight of the world, they post those fucking memes that
I know what you mean.
And fuck all to do with the show. But, if you're going to stab me in the back, you better stab me in the front. Look me in the eyes. Yeah, okay, Snowflake.
Right, yeah. It's people who miss the point of the whole show, but yeah.
Yeah.
By anachronistic music, you mean kind of like Cruella?
Yeah, very similar to that. The music in Harlots had a lot of electric guitar in it, and a lot of just it had more of an Irish rock feel to it. That type of music.
Okay.
So I wouldn't mind something like that.
Interesting.
Yeah, so not like Sofia Coppola's movie about Marie Antoinette.
No, I wouldn't put in, unless, maybe at the end, kind of like what The Great does, where at the end of every episode, when you cut to credits, you get a song that is definitely anachronistic and modern, because that's what The Great did. They ended the series with Shook Me All Night Long. But doing something like that pertains to the circumstance they find themselves in the at the end of the episode.
Yeah. I mean, I personally just would love to see some crime from late 1800s, early 1900s London. I think that would be kind of cool.
Being committed by women.
Yeah.
Exactly, and you can have all your different archetypes of women. The tough, but she's got a squishy middle. Thief.
It'd be Ocean's 8, but good.
Yeah, actually, I liked Ocean's 8. It's Ocean's 12
bad.
And even though what's his name from What We Do in the Shadows? That's the one that builds the continuity. That's the one that builds the universe.
Yes, he does. Matt Berry.
I'm doing gay shit over here.
Yes.
All right, Mike.
Yes.
Oh, I'm sorry. Yeah, Catherine, what are your thoughts on this?
I think it would work. I mean, the bling ring did well, so.
I forgot about the bling ring.
But yeah, that was based on a true story.
I have no idea if this is all based on something else or not, but I choose to remain ignorant. So
what was it?
I said I'd never watched the bling ring, so I choose to remain ignorant. This stuff might all be, it might be a full adaptation of the 40 Elephants, and I would never know.
No. The bling ring is based on an actual thing that happened. I haven't seen the bling ring, but I did hear about it on Scam Goddess.
Oh, okay.
It was a bunch of young people who just broke into celebrity homes and stole expensive things.
Okay.
Oh yeah, I've heard about that. Yeah.
Yep. So if that did pretty well. So a true story. And people deep down want to see the rich get robbed. So
it had Emma Watson in it, didn't it?
Emma Watson, Hayden Panettiere, Zac Efron, Lindsay Lohan, Hilary Duff, Brian Austin Green, Megan Fox, Orlando Bloom.
So all the young, good-looking actors.
Yes,
that's what's showing up on my my search, but I'm not going to swear to it.
Oh.
All right.
All right, so Mike, I guess you're up.
All right, cool. My next one would be a 4 to 6 episode miniseries called "The Happiest Land on Earth," and be basically all about Walt's effort to build Disneyland.
To all who come to this happy place, welcome. Disneyland is your land. Here age relives fond memories of the past, and here youth may savor the challenge and promise of the future. Disneyland is dedicated to the ideals, the dreams, and the hard facts that have created America, with the hope that it will be a source of joy and inspiration to all the world. Thank you.
I do want to ask a question.
Sure.
How is this going to be different than all of the other documentaries that covered the building of Disneyland?
Well, this would be a dramatic telling.
Yeah. Aha.
This wouldn't
be a documentary. It'd just be, yeah.
Right.
Yeah. Probably start with probably just like as World War II is ending or just after. During that time, Walt was pretty much kind of self-distancing himself from the studio because after the animation strike in, 41 or 42 or so, he pretty much has lost all of his love for the animation. And then, he started building this idea about, hey, all these little parks are kind of cool. And, as, he started coming up with Mickey Mouse Park, as he started getting various people, including a lot of his animators, in to help him. And then finally he managed to get money, but he had to build it all in less than a year. And, I'd love for this to be, I imagine it would probably be on Disney Plus, but I'd rather it be on Hulu, because I would like them to portray Walt more realistically, flaws and all.
Yeah.
I get the feeling Disney Plus would probably try and
sanitize it. It'd be sanitized, yeah.
Yeah, absolutely, 100%.
Well, Mike, if you think about that Mickey Mouse documentary that we watched that was produced by Disney Plus, while they didn't completely tarnish the legacy of Mickey Mouse, they were pretty honest about a lot of the stuff, like the litigation and stuff that they went through.
Yeah, well, I just always go back to Behind the Attraction, which really fun series, but I watched their Behind the Attraction on the Disneyland Hotel.
Yeah.
And they get to the point where the Rathers, the Disney company gets it takes it over from the Rathers, and they, the Behind the Attraction says, oh yeah, when in rather, he willed it to the Disney company. He wanted them to have it, and then you go to Yesterworld, the Yesterworld YouTube channel, and watch their video on the Disneyland Hotel, and no, Michael Eisner in the board pretty much made it so selling it to anyone else would be impossible.
Yeah.
Without completely destroying the hotel.
Yeah.
So it wasn't like this. Oh, he didn't will it. No, they kind of yanked it out from under them.
Right.
And I just because I love Behind the Attraction, but they sanitized it a little bit too much for my taste, and I would like to, because let's face it, Walt was, especially after the animation. Yeah, after the animation strike, he was not a nice person to most of his animators. And if you went on strike, he wrote you off, basically. He tried to fire most of those people.
Was it Ex Astacio, or was there somebody else that he? No, it wasn't X. It was
Ex Astacio. He loved Ex Astacio. No, I'd have to go back and look it up. But there were a number of animators that he tried to fire. And a couple of them that he actually did, but he was forced to rehire. So I want to see this this flawed Walt, but just his struggle, because he went through a lot to build Disney World in less than a year.
Yeah.
Right, and the thing is, a lot of the lessons he applied from Disneyland, or that he learned from Disneyland, he applied to Disney World.
Right. Yeah. Well,
that's why he got that special tax district and everything.
Yeah. But
it's screwing over Florida now.
Yeah. I figure it kind of just from 1945 or so until 1955 when Disneyland actually opened, and have that be the final episode. But I would just love to see the actual story of that. But you could see a documentary, and that'd be really cool. But I would love to see actual dramatization and see some of the fights between Walt and his wife, because he's tearing up their backyard and taking away all of her gardening area to build a model railroad.
So, Mike, I love the idea, but I have a suggestion, and I'm just going to put it on the table. You can pick it up. You can do whatever you want with it. Instead of it focusing Walt's drive to do that, maybe you have maybe the episodes are titled by the name of the people. So you have one that's called Walt, and you get him having the idea, and then you do another one about Herb, as in Herb Ryman, who designed the Sleeping Beauty castle and did a lot of the artwork. And then maybe you do one called Raleigh, and Raleigh is showing all the stuff that he. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah. What about one called Roy? Well, Roy Disney, having him trying to get all the money together.
Honestly, I could see like a Stanley Tucci as Roy Disney.
Oh God, yeah.
Ooh, I like that a lot.
Nervous accountant.
Yeah. And just constantly trying to protect Walt from himself, basically.
Right. And then at the end, maybe you have one that brings it all together. And oh God, I can't remember the guy's name.
Who?
He was the guy who was the newscaster who hosted the opening of Disneyland.
Oh, Linkletter.
Yeah. It was Art Linkletter. And the last episode is called Art. And they open the park.
With Art Linkletter, Ronald Reagan in there as well.
Oh God.
Yeah, Ronald Reagan was one of the.
He was. That's right. He was governor of California.
No. He was not.
Still, yeah. This was.
He was one of the reporters that helped.
Oh, that's right. Yeah.
He actually interviewed the Rathers and asked them about the Disneyland hotel that they were building at the time.
So, yeah, I like the idea a lot. I think that, definitely it wasn't, I mean, everyone, whenever they talk about especially Disneyland. It was Waltstream. It's Waltstream. It's Walt's Drive. There were a lot of hands that built that park.
Well, I would love that, but I think you would kind of. It would essentially still be Walt's story. He would be like the through line that would hold everything together. So you could like focus on some of the other characters, but it would still Walt would have to still play a major role in each of the episodes.
Oh yeah, but kind of like the way that he played. Walt was kind of a featured character in Saving Mr. Banks.
Right. I mean, I'd love to have Tom Hanks in there playing Walt, but he'd be playing the older Walt, and you'd need a younger guy.
Yeah, I agree. I like that idea a lot. And you know me, I am a nerd for like Disneyland, Disney World history.
Well, so am I. You know that
about the making of Disneyland.
Yeah, we both are.
Disney's Land. It's actually really good. So
yeah,
awesome. Joe.
Okay.
Well, we're waiting.
All right, for my next pitch, working title is Red Line, and it is the tale of how two brothers and amateur racers showed up to the 1979 24 Hours of Le Mans out of nowhere with a duffel bag full of cash and paid $200,000, or the equivalent of almost $1 million in today's money, to buy their way into winning the race overall. With the win, they exploded into the American motorsports scene and overnight became household names. But it turns out that the Whittington brothers were also drug lords, parlaying their multi-million-dollar weed business into pretty lucrative racing careers, making a name for themselves at the highest levels of American motorsport.
Klaus, their driver, he's going to go first, and then Bill, and they're like, wait. Now, why is your driver going first? Because it's my car. My driver goes first, then you, then you. And I go, what if he crashes? We don't get to drive the car. We spend all the money. He goes, that's racing. And they're like, no. He's like, fine. Well, don't drive. And they're like, well, what does it take for us to go first? And lightheartedly, he goes, buy the car. And he was already selling his cars. It was in the business was building and selling race cars. So he threw a crazy number at him, like $200,000, which was more than what the car was worth, just to shut him up. And they go, okay. And he's like, what? Like, go back to our trailer, go to the duffel bag, take out $200,000 and not a penny more.
And the way I envisioned this is something similar to the vein as Ford versus Ferrari, but lean heavily into the 80s atmosphere. Because they were based out of the southeastern U.S. and Florida. So that right there makes it a natural for any movie about drug running.
What was that movie with Tom Cruise as the cocaine runner?
Oh, he was a pilot, yeah.
Yeah.
I'm looking it up. And by the way, Joe, I would have input more, but I was taking a drink because you're talking about racing. So
because I could totally see it in the style of that movie where it's like,
yes,
it's very kind of almost tongue in cheek, just following them around as they're just buying their way into racing.
Right, exactly, because it is such a wild, for racing nerds like me, it is such a wild story. And basically, how it starts off is, like I said, these two brothers who were completely unknown. They just showed up out of nowhere. And originally, what the plan was is, okay, so they go to this team called Kremer Racing, and they were racing Porsche 935s. And in sports car racing, you have what I'd call basically a lot of gentleman racers. Basically rich guys who just do this for a hobby. Or rich guys who, will pay like $10,000-$20,000 to drive, to spend some time driving racing the car during the 24 hours of Le Mans. And basically that's what they did. That the Whittington brothers did is they paid $20,000 per seat to drive a few hours, a couple of times during the race. the team had its own professional driver whose career was to drive race cars. So they were like, okay, at the start of the race, our professional driver, he's going to start the race, and he'll do the first shift, and then you guys can take over for a couple hours after that. They were like, well, no.
Wait, the name of the movie was American Made.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
So the Whittingtons were like, no, we paid $20,000. We should start the race. And I was like, okay, you want to do that? And and the team owner just kind of threw in. He said, you want to do that? Buy the car. And they were like, okay, how much? And he just jokingly said, you know what, $200,000. The brothers went and said, okay, back in our trailer, go to the duffel bag, take $200,000, not a cent more, and come back and we'll take the car. And that's what happened. And they managed to win the race. I mean, the professional driver did most of the driving.
Right.
So, and he did a brilliant job. They won by such a huge amount that the brothers driving wasn't really a big issue.
Right.
But that, like I said, that was their launching pad into big time American racing. But they will also, it's kind of not really, people aren't really sure if the racing was just to launder their drug money, or if the racing was feeding the drug running. They were using their racing as kind of like, okay, well, as sort of like advertising for their drug running, because I mean, there's so many layers. There's like a Shell suntan company that sold no product. The race cars were sponsored by a suntan lotion company that had advertising, there were print ads and everything else like that, but sold no product. And the FBI kind of like, wait a second, what the hell's going on here? I mean, they made enough money that they bought one of the most famous racetracks in the U.S. It's a track called Road Atlanta. But unbeknownst to people, the track is surrounded by forest. So you really can't, it's surrounded by huge, tall pine trees. You can't really see beyond, what's going on the track. Well, apparently next to the track, they cut down a landing strip for their planes. And during races, because again, during the race, you're paying attention to what's going on the track, and the cars are so loud that you can't hear a plane landing with 2 tons of marijuana in it. So yeah, so something like American Made, lean heavily into the 80s and just go nuts.
Nice. And I like that too. You know what, honestly, Joe, you know what will always win me over to an 80s movie? When you go deep cuts.
Yeah.
On that 80s stuff. Let's not just open up with Jump by Van Halen because everybody knows it. Go with some deep cuts, No,
it would start at the 1979 24 Hours of Le Mans when you have these two brothers with a duffel bag full of, and it wasn't like it was cash. It was like hundreds and bricks of cash.
Money.
Awesome.
I mean, and there's like rumors that they use their race cars to actually smuggle the drugs into the because in Europe, the cars go cross the borders all the time, and border inspections aren't going to tear down a race car. They don't know what they're looking at. So there's like rumors that they've actually hid their drugs in the race cars.
Awesome.
In special command. Oh yeah. It'd be so wild.
I love that. Cool. All right. Yeah, I would watch that. So.
Yeah, I'd watch that.
Yeah. Should be fun. Catherine.
I've thought of another one.
Oh.
Lovely. All right. Well, tell you what. Since Joe just wrapped, why don't you give us our first one or your second one? Doesn't matter.
Yep.
And back to you.
Okay.
Close it out.
So. All right. So I remembered, we were talking about various things, and I remembered I told you guys about this episode of the Lions Led by Donkeys podcast called The Battle of Athens.
Yep.
Where what happened was there was like this small town in the mid-40s where people were just stealing elections to make sure that they get to keep their fascist people in charge. violent deputies, racketeering, stolen elections, voter fraud, all kinds of stuff. And the thing was that there were a bunch of people that had just come back from World War II. They'd survived World War II, and they're like, this is fascism. We know what fascism looks like, and we know how to deal with it. And so they just all these veterans got together. It's like, get your guns.
Nice.
And they went and they fought the corrupt officials and stopped them.
Cantrell, who came from a wealthy and influential family in nearby Etowah, tied his campaign closely to the popularity of the Roosevelt administration. Cantrell rode FDR's coattails to victory over his Republican opponent in what came to be known as the vote grab of 1936, which delivered McMinn County to Tennessee's Crump machine. The sheriff and all of his deputies were paid under a fee system. They got money for every person they booked, incarcerated, and released. I'm sure you can see how this would cause problems.
So like a live-action Rambo First Blood.
No.
I mean, like a real life.
No. No.
Rambo was the soldier who came back, and then because he had the audacity of growing his hair a little long, Brian Denny, he decided to just abuse him.
But yeah, no, he was this is different because it's these are people that survived Guadalcanal, the Bulge, the beach of Normandy, and
they came home and they were like, shit.
Yeah, they were like, no, we're going to have a fair and honest election, aren't we?
I like that. You know what? I see that as being something that HBO would put as a movie.
Yeah, that's what I'm thinking too. It's it's an HBO movie, just a one thing, 2 hours. You're going to sum it up. It can be done pretty quick.
Yeah,
pretty quick. Yeah, because it being done as a movie. Yeah, but yeah,
never I know you had kind of mentioned that story before. I don't regularly listen to Lions Led by Donkeys.
Mm-hmm. You know what? The thing is that podcast has so many ideas for movies that could be made, just because a lot of the stuff they touch on hasn't really been discussed. Yeah, I mean, he does some really deep cuts.
Yeah, he does deep cuts on stuff that is not good, and people are like, that's not going to be cinematic. This is one that people would go to see.
Yeah,
because it's positive.
Yeah, I like that.
In my opinion, yeah, a lot of his stuff is much darker and
it's very dark.
or just goofy. There's also all the the animals that have participated in war, but that would be a series on Discovery or something, or Animal Planet. But this one I think would work, and I agree. HBO movie.
Yeah.
There's a book. There was a podcast. There could definitely be a movie of this.
Nice. I like that. Awesome. All right. Well, I guess it's back around to me then to finish off my last pick here. So, I've got one. This would, again, be for streaming. Maybe this could be Hulu or Prime. And it's just called Okay. And it tells the story of Sergio Zyman, who was the marketing director for Coca-Cola, who was fired after he spearheaded the new Coke promotion. After the failure of that, he was fired, but then in the early 90s, he was brought back to try to find a beverage and a marketing ploy that would appeal to Gen X. And his idea was a concoction called OK Soda, which is one of the most baffling marketing promotions of the 1990s. It might seem normal now because we do a lot of cynical and meta type of advertising now, but in the 1990s, this was downright dystopian.
An important announcement regarding OK Soda. Due to the controversial nature of this product, a toll-free number has been established to handle stories regarding its consumption. That number is 1-800-I-FEEL-OK. We encourage you to report the good things that happen when you drink OK. Also, we encourage you to report the bad things that happen when you choose not to drink OK. That number again, 1-800-I-FEEL-OK. Things are going to be okay.
And to essentially have this guy who is brought back in, and he has a minor success introducing the world to Fruitopia, also kind of with that, gearing for the youth market, to come up with this beverage that is essentially the flavor is indescribable, the can is unappealing, the advertisements are just like, they kind of seem to be lecturing you about it's okay to not be okay. And the beauty is that when, in my mind's eye of watching this, like, I traveled, this guy, Sergio Simon, says, I traveled the world. And you know that Coca-Cola is the second most recognizable word in the world. Do you know what the first is?
Okay.
Okay. There we go. And you can call it okay because you're not asking people to exceed their expectations. The taste of this will exceed their expectations, but they're going to go in with lowered expectations. We've got this amazing ad campaign, and we have an artist he's the artist of Ghost World. He's going to design our cans. Now, fun little fact I found out about those cans, there's a face that shows up on almost all the cans of just like this like bored-looking young man. Turns out he drew that based on a photograph of a young Charles Manson for his first month.
Oh God.
Yep. And nobody.
That's right.
When they found out about that, it's like, why did you do that? He said, "There's nothing in my contract that said I couldn't." But I see this as being like, because I just recently watched Air, and I watched Flamin' Hot, which are both just movies about product. Air is phenomenal because it's the idea of selling the person as the shoe, and it's more than just like some an like a sponsorship deal. This shoe is Michael Jordan, and in the case of Flamin' Hot, it's about this guy who has he's been working at the bottom for so long, and he notices that when he works for Frito-Lay, they're missing a specific market. This, for OK, it's like that, but only about jumping from one failure, not learning from that failure, and moving to another failure. Now, the interesting thing is that this guy's actually Sergio Simon is a very successful public speaker. He's written a few books called, as part of the Death of Marketing as We Know It series. So he is actually successful, and I feel like that needs to be played up. But again, just like with the Menachem Golan story, wide-eyed optimism. Like, there's no such thing as a bad idea. We're gonna channel our ideas because we need to get through to cynical Generation X.
Well, it's really kind of the embodiment of the American ideal, or the American fantasy, basically.
Yeah. This is the second chance, and that second chance was okay. That's a good tagline. I like that.
I can see it because all too often with these product movies or movies that are based around like an idea or something like that, they always end up with the success.
Yeah.
Very rarely do you see something where it's a failure.
Right. And I had this conversation with Catherine and Mike last episode when we were off air, because you weren't with us, Joe. Mike, correct me if I'm wrong, you'd never actually heard of OK Soda, right?
Yeah, no, never.
Okay. Catherine remembered it, though, right?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, no, It tasted terrible. I seem to remember somebody making a joke about it tasting like it was the mop water from the floor of the Coca-Cola factory.
Yeah.
But I called, there was one summer where I called 1-800-I-FEEL-OK every day. So, like, I wouldn't have drunk OK Soda nowadays, but I totally would have followed them on social media because they had it was like, you know, nihilistic Arby's and stuff like that. But there was like, you call them and there would be a joke or a comment or something, and it was an 800 number, so it wasn't like a 900 number. You weren't paying for it. You could call them from a payphone, which I did because I was working at Cumberland Farms that year.
Yeah.
And it was just like, it was just fun.
Yeah, and that's the thing too. Like it was test marketed out here in Massachusetts, but I was living in Virginia. So when I'd come home to visit my mother, I would grab like cases of it and I'd bring it back and I'd share it with my coworkers, and they're like, "Why the fuck are you doing this to us?"
Unlike Fruitopia, which was actually tasty. I really liked Fruitopia.
I like Fruitopia. Yeah, I like Fruitopia, but
yeah,
okay.
Fruitopia. Yeah, OK Soda was terrible. Fruitopia was tasty, and their labels were really cool. And I was texting with you guys, and I still have one Fruitopia label that I peeled off and like wrapped in clear tape so that I could use it as a bookmark.
So I'm sorry, Joe. Did you ever have it? Okay.
Oh yeah, I've had OK.
All right.
It was awful. God. Ugh.
Yeah. It was not.
I think I took one sip and I was like, "Yeah, nope."
It was like spicy orange soda was like the kindest thing I heard. I also heard that if you blend Coca-Cola, Dr. Pepper, and orange soda, you could closely approximate the flavor. So now the next time I see one of those like those computer operated Coke machines that you see at Burger King.
Oh yeah. And Wendy's. You get those at Wendy's too, and Qdoba.
Wendy's, Five Guys. You said like Five Guys.
Yeah.
Yep.
But yeah, that's the thing. And Joe, I like your spin on that. It's like we always see this ending in success, and it ends in success in a certain way, but just not with this product.
Right.
And then maybe
and then
thing at the end, like Sergio Simon went off to become a successful author of the book series, The Death of Marketing as We Know It, and is a successful speaker. OK Soda merchandise now sells for hundreds of dollars on the internet.
Goddamn eBay.
So, and now Mike's like, I never want to know this. I will kill the person who makes a time machine so I could go back to 1994 and try to drink this.
Yeah.
Nah, I'm good.
Okay.
I drink my tea now.
I gotcha. Yeah, I know you're not much of a soda drinker either.
No, not anymore, no.
Yeah, so. All right. Well, Mike, what's your last pick?
My last pick is, I call it, Are You Going to Close the Beaches? And it's a story of how a prodigy director with only one feature film to his name took a best-selling novel about a killer shark, and thanks to a mechanical shark that never worked, an ocean film shoot that was an absolute nightmare, and going more than 100 days over the shooting schedule and 300% over budget, released a film that changed cinema forever and became the very first blockbuster.
Brody? Stop that chum line again, will you?
Let Hooper take a turn. Hooper drives the boat, Chief.
Stop playing with yourself, Hooper. Slow ahead, if you please.
You heard him. Slow ahead. Slow ahead. I can go slow ahead. Come on down and chum some of this shit.
I'm thinking this would be either a actual, big screen movie, or maybe a 4-part miniseries, depending on how much you wanted to break it down.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, just the story of how Jaws was made is almost as interesting as the movie itself.
Kind of more so.
Oh yeah, very much so.
Right, and like the grand irony that the fact that Bruce the Shark malfunctioned made the movie better.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
Yes, I agree. And Dave and I were having a conversation. Dave McClain and I were having a conversation about this, because we were talking about his Star Wars movie and how it's amazing how that movie was saved in the editing room. Jaws is the same thing, and I feel like with Dave's idea of having Steven Spielberg being the only person in that room of Lucas's director friends who saw something in what he saw of Star Wars, because he'd experienced that.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I mean, and Werner Field's absolutely the MVP of that one.
Yeah,
and John Williams, obviously. But I mean, obviously, I love Jaws. I'm going to see it tomorrow, actually, in IMAX.
Cool.
Yeah, down at the Aquarium IMAX theater.
I know where that is.
Yeah, and they're showing it tomorrow at 7:00. So I'm going to go see that. But nice. I think the story of that, and just the kind of from what I've heard, the vague animosity between Shaw and Dreyfus. That'd be a really interesting thing to show in the movie. Obviously, just the amount of writing that Gottlieb and all the writers were doing.
Yeah.
And the fact that sometimes they'd be shooting, they get the script the day before the shoot, and the fact that a brand new director, he'd only done one feature film before that, and he wanted to shoot on the ocean, which any director with any kind of more experience would say, do not shoot on the ocean. But Spielberg's like, I can do it.
I've never directed a feature film, Mike, and I know not to shoot on the ocean for your second movie.
Yeah. Yeah, because especially since he wanted a perfectly empty horizon, and if you're out on the ocean and you see a sailboat and like 20 miles away, you gotta wait for it to go all the way across.
You know what? I'm also thinking too, Mike. The actor that plays Robert Shaw has to just be the most Irish person that ever Irished.
Yeah,
on the big screen.
Brendan Gleeson.
Yes.
I don't physically, I don't think he looks like Robert Shaw, but
but Catherine, have you seen the Banshee of Inisherin?
Yeah.
I know exactly what you're talking about. No, I haven't.
Yeah, he's got Irish down perfect.
And bonus points to him if he can do the Indianapolis speech while sloshed, just like Shaw did.
Of course he can.
Yeah, I guess
Gleeson can do anything.
Yeah,
anything.
I guess they did two takes for that for the Indianapolis speech. One, Shaw was drunk off his ass, and one he wasn't. You can kind of tell, like, if you look at his eyes, some of them he's glassy-eyed, some of them he's not. Some shots he's not. But yeah,
I mean, he was practically dead when he made that movie, and he was, he was mostly dead by the time he did The Deep. And I know The Deep is credited with killing him. So,
but I just think that would be the most fascinating movie ever. Or a 4-part miniseries, depending on if you wanted to show how much you wanted to show or how much you wanted to cut out. And bonus points if you can film it on on Martha's Vineyard.
Oh yeah. Yeah, I'm down. I'm down with that. All right, so Catherine volunteered to go next.
Yes. Yes. So this is the one I was planning on before I stumbled across my brain and went, oh, there's another thing. So anyway, my working title is Tyrant King of Schenectady.
Okay.
This is based on Steve Rossi's stranglehold on the Schenectady School District as heard on This American Life's episode Petty Tyrant.
That was on a Wednesday. On Friday morning, cops swarmed the pen and arrested Steve. They had to.
A longtime employee with the Schenectady City School District is in jail without bail tonight. The facility's director is accused of setting off an explosion outside a house. Police say they also found explosives in his office on school grounds.
Superintendent Eric Ely called a news conference the following Monday, saying he was shocked to find out Steve Rossi was a thug.
My reaction is shock, certainly concern for the safety of our employees as well as our students.
Many people I talked to said this enraged them, that Ely claimed ignorance about Steve's behavior. Ely politely declined to talk to me for this story. He's still facing lawsuits from former employees. But he gave an extended interview to the local CBS reporter, Marcy Natal. He said he thought workers' complaints of Rossi's tyranny were overblown.
So he was, this is a guy who was hired in 1973 as a laborer at the Schenectady School District, making $3.12 an hour. He eventually worked his way up and got, higher positions. And then he decided that he wanted to run for union president for, the people that do this kind of work. And he bullied people into helping him run, and he got the position. And then later he was promoted to director of buildings and grounds for the district. And if he was in a supervisory position, he couldn't be in the union anymore because he'd have hiring and firing power. So he was like, don't call me director, call me give me the title of head utility worker. So that meant he wasn't legally the director or manager, so he could continue to do what he was doing, being a bully, and but people couldn't go to the union to complain. The first thing you're supposed to do is go to your manager. He was the manager. Then you go to the union. He was the union. And so he continued doing that. And when he was promoted, he was making, before that he was making $37,500 a year. And then when he was promoted to not director, he was making $67,500 for salary. And then he also took on the position of energy manager. And so he would go around, and if you were running a space heater in your classroom, look out, he would come down on you like a ton of bricks. But yeah, so he was just terrorizing people, scaring them, bullying them. There was his secretary at one point, he pretended to grab her by the hair while other people were there, drag her into his office and bend her over his desk. And
oh, okay.
Yeah. He was like, isn't this fun? And everybody's like, yeah, boss, of course it's fun.
Wow.
And, people that tried to oppose him, he would, terrorize them, literally. He would go with, vandalize their homes, leave M80s on their cars in the driveway.
Jesus.
Set bombs to go off. And, there was one bombing that failed because he wasn't a smoker, but what he was doing was, lighting a cigarette and then putting it next to the fuse that he had rigged. But he didn't know that New York State has a law about, you have to have fire-safe papers where if you're not continually puffing on the cigarette, it goes out. So they had DNA evidence.
Oh.
But he'd never been convicted of a crime, so they had to, recruit some people that had been, including the secretary that he'd been abusive to, that when she admitted that she didn't find him sexually attractive, he, had her demoted and kicked out. She had to use her ring to find out where he was eating breakfast, because he always ate breakfast out and usually forced people that he liked to go out to eat breakfast with him. It's like, you're coming out to eat breakfast. Yes, sir. And so she found out where he was eating, and eventually they managed to grab a fork before the the cops grabbed a fork before the waitresses cleared it so that they could get the DNA evidence and prove that he was the one that had lit the cigarette. And they also got somebody that like had his own problems, and they're like, we would like you to help us out. And he was like, sure thing, I will help you out to reduce my problems. And so he went in with a wire and talked to Steve Rossi repeatedly. And eventually the guy was, this guy Keith was like, I want to teach somebody a lesson. Do you have some explosives or something I can do? And it's like, oh yeah, sure. Here, have this, thing that's like, it's an explosive that he just had in his office behind a potted fake plant. It held more than 17 grams of volatile flash powder, which is 300 times more powerful than the strongest commercially available firework.
Oh,
his office was in a middle school.
Jeez.
He had this thing on top of his file cabinet in a middle school. So the next day, the police roll up and arrest him because they had as much evidence as they needed. He was eventually charged with 22 felonies and convicted of 18 of them.
Wow.
And the prosecution called 62 witnesses. They had DNA evidence. They had wire recordings. The defense had 2 witnesses, and one of them was cross-examined so effectively she kind of did Rossi more harm than good. So he was arrested in 2009 after like doing this for 15 years. And he's not eligible for parole until 2032.
Couldn't happen
By
to
the
an
way,
guy.
Yeah. However, he was never technically fired, so he's still allowed his pension of $80,000 a year. Because when he was arrested in 2009, he was making more than $125,000 a year salary.
Wow.
By the way that he manipulated the system. And now he's like, I deserve a commutation of sentence. I've done my time. My wife and I talk about whether or not I'm a psychopath, but I feel in control of myself when I'm mad. But yeah, I'm surprised that like this story is crazy. It has bombs. It has vandalism. It has just all kinds of corruption. And it hasn't been made into a movie or a series yet. I'm thinking like a 3-part series on Netflix currently.
Oh yeah, they love that kind of stuff. That small town crime kind of stuff. Wow.
But yeah, I at least highly recommend listening to the This American Life episode about this. Episode number 419, Petty Tyrant. But
Excellent.
they did somebody heard Heretics about Carlton Pearson and made a movie in 2018 called Come Sunday with that guy played by Chiwetel Ejiofor. So it's like, why hasn't anybody heard this? And it's like, there are bombs.
Yeah, I'm in. I love any movie or TV series about petty small town politics.
Yup.
Yeah. There are people still suffering with PTSD because of this fucker.
Oh jeez.
Oh jeez. Oh, those are the worst.
Oh yeah.
And he doesn't know what he did. He's like, what? He's like, I knew I could maybe be arrested for this, but going to prison for property damage? Property damage. He considers what he did property damage. It's like, yeah, I guess if you leave an M80 on somebody's car, you don't think they're actually going to die, and you could call it property damage.
I did everything right, and they indicted me.
Yeah.
So, wow. All right, Joe. Well, you're taking us home with this, so you get something that can top that one. God damn.
I'll try. All right. So
I think so.
My final pitch: the Battle of Bamber Bridge. In Great Britain, as the Allies are ramping up in preparation for the upcoming invasion of mainland Europe, America's hypocrisy is laid bare in the very home of its ally. Like generations before them, black Americans willingly took arms to fight for the liberty that their own nation vehemently denies them. But when they arrived in the UK, they were surprised to find not a nation that separated them from society because of the color of their skin, but a people who welcomed them with open arms and gratitude that these young men and women were willing to sacrifice their lives for a foreign land. Their white counterparts, shocked at seeing the black soldiers being treated as equals, demanded that their hosts enforce the same racial order that they were so accustomed back at home. But when a small pub in the sleepy village of Lancashire said bollocks to the whole idea of Jim Crow in the UK, tension finally came to a head. In the wake of the Detroit race riots of 1943, a group of black soldiers said enough is enough following the killing of a young black private at the hands of white MPs.
During World War II, black American servicemen stationed in England were generally welcomed by their British hosts in ways that were completely opposite of the Jim Crow segregationist practices back in America. Black GIs would drink and socialize in mixed company in British pubs, where they were not only allowed to enter, but were warmly welcomed by the locals. Black soldiers saw around them a very different reality from that which they faced at home, a non-segregated society where they were welcomed as fellow fighters against fascism rather than second-class soldiers. The U.S. Army authorities, however, did not condone this equal treatment.
That led to the Battle of Bamber Bridge, which
they covered
was
this
actually,
on
which it was, it was covered on Lions Led by Donkeys, but it didn't become public until fairly recently.
Mm-hmm. Interesting.
Because, so basically what happened, the UK, the United States asked the UK to basically have some sort of like segregation.
Mm-hmm.
And, the British, in their very kind of passive aggressive way, said, okay, they went to their people. It's like, we don't recommend that you fraternize with the black, the black soldiers, but they didn't like enforce it. There wasn't like a hard law or set rule that said they couldn't. They just, like I said, they just in a very British way said, we'd like it if you did, type of thing. So when the black troops started arriving, they were some of the first troops to start arriving in England to because they weren't black troops soldiers weren't allowed to be in combat units. Right. A lot of them were in support units. So a lot of the initial troops that came to the UK to build the bases and the airfields and stuff like that were the black soldiers. They're the ones that were, like typical American history, built on the back of black people.
Yep.
A lot of the big bases that the United States used, and that England used too, like the RAF, were built by black American soldiers. But the locals, the British people, welcomed them with open arms. Like,
yeah,
they were dating the local women and stuff like that, and they had no problem whatsoever with the black troops. Now, some of them, some of the more uptight English people, surprise, surprise, didn't serve because they didn't want to lose, they didn't want to lose the business of the white soldiers and stuff like that. But for the most part, segregation just wasn't a thing in the UK. I mean, I'm not that I'm giving a pass to the UK. I mean, they have their own history and stuff like that we won't cover here. But
there's a great line in the show Ted Lasso, where they're having a conversation with Roy about his, like his dad is like, is your dad a little racist? He's like, he's a 60-year-old man who lives in the south of London. Of course he's a little racist.
Yeah, they've got a bit of racism, but England is more classist than it is racist.
Yeah, that's more. Yeah, in England it's more about class and actual outright racism, though. But anyways, so the basically the white soldiers and officers had a problem with this. It's like, no, we don't want you serving the black people. And they were like, if they dated the English girls, they were like, well, how do I know she didn't go with a black guy before, the night before? And, and it's just like, it's, the typical U.S. Southern, just U.S. racist bullshit.
Oh my God,
well,
cooties!
Yeah. So, what happened was, there was this rule that if you were it applied to both white and black soldiers, but if you were off base, you basically had to wear like what are called Class A, which is basically your like a suit and tie uniform.
Yeah.
Okay. To basically, so people know that you're a soldier in the U.S. Army. Well, a couple of black soldiers went to the local pub in Lancashire, weren't wearing their Class A's, and a white officer noticed that and called the MPs, the military police, which were all white. And they were going in to arrest him, and everybody basically threw a fit. Like, and even the English people were like, what's your problem? Like an RAF officer went to the MPs and says, hey, just leave the guy alone. He's having a drink. Let him enjoy the night and stuff like that.
Yeah.
And a bit of a scuffle broke out, and the black private started to run away and got shot in the back.
Oh.
Yes. So all hell breaks loose. All the black soldiers in their unit back at their base heard rumors that the white MPs were coming in to take them and basically, torture them and kill them and stuff like that. So they started picking up arms. And just like I said, all hell broke loose. There was a firefight. I think there was like 7 people injured, and one, and the black private was killed. So, and all the black soldiers got court-martialed and convicted, and none of the white soldiers, none of the white MPs were, even though the judge advocate general noted that the racism and the white MPs taunting and their racism towards the black soldiers was the primary cause. They got away with it.
Of course.
So of course.
Wow. So where are you seeing that? How are you seeing this as a film or TV show or miniseries?
It's a film. I think it's a film because it was only a one night thing. It was only like a couple hours. It was, the initial, the initial killing of the black soldier, I think, happened like at 7:00 that night, and by 6:00 the next morning, it was over. So
yeah, okay,
but
yeah,
it was one of those things where, again, in light of the Detroit race riots and all the propaganda coming out of the U.S. about fighting for liberty and everything else like that, for this to be so out there, and the U.S. and again, this wasn't well known about outside of the UK, outside of because the U.S. military and government put the lid on this. Right. It's like, okay, how can we say we're fighting for liberty and freedom against these fascists when we're doing this to our own people? And you got to remember that, for all, Hitler was a shitty person and stuff like that, but the Germans love to point to the U.S. and say, well, look at what you're doing to your people. We learned this from you.
We learned it from you.
I learned it from watching you, Dad.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah,
I could see this being a theatrical movie.
Yeah.
That wouldn't get shown in Florida.
Oh, God, no.
Florida, Texas, most of the southern states, no.
Just leave it to the Northeast elites to watch this one. But at least we won't have to buy out theaters and inflate our numbers that.
Yep.
Sound of freedom, sound of freedom, sound of freedom.
Sound of boredom.
So, well, guys, I love all these ideas. This is great. I really wish that hopefully there's somebody out there after the SAG-AFTRA and the WGA strike. You're listening to this podcast. Please feel free to reach out to us and let us know which idea you liked the most. Multiple, if you can. I want to see all my friends succeed here. So
our prices are very reasonable.
We are very reasonable people. We I don't think anyone would accuse us of not being reasonable.
No.
No, exactly. Exactly.
So I
want to thank everybody who contributed to their thoughts on what would make great dramatizations of stuff. That's a lot of great history out there, and I'm really, really excited about this. And a lot of stuff I had never heard about before. So this is like a history lesson all in one. Who says you don't learn stuff from listening to Geek Salad?
That's right.
So, by the way, I do want to throw out a very special thank you. They didn't contribute to this episode, but we got a lovely shout out on the Bitches with Beards podcast from this past week.
Nice.
So I just want to thank them, and hopefully they're listening to this right now if they can stand all of this stuff that we're talking about right now. So, gentlemen, thank you so much. I look forward to you letting me know if you ever do find a tomatoey Chardonnay. And I'm sorry I let you know of the existence of such a thing. So it's a real thing, and it turned me off a Chardonnay 20 years ago. So anyway.
So that's the next movie, huh?
Yeah, exactly.
Journey of a Tomatoey Chardonnay.
Yeah, Andy and the tomatoey Chardonnay. It just shows up as free on Twitter on one of the stupid movie things. Oh, I'm sorry, 10. I'm not calling it X. Who calls something that will be a future financial app X? You call it 10. That's a fucking number. What genius? What kind of idiot called it X?
Andy,
see 11?
Andy, they're predicting it's going
Yes.
to be an X app.
It is going to be an X app. Jesus Christ. If it weren't for the community I have built on 10, I would leave immediately. But I do have I have a few Blue Sky passes. So yeah. But we'll get into that at the end. So anyway, next episode, we're going to stick with movies. This is a summer movie. Summer is a movie time. I mean, hell, we just had Barbenheimer. And
and summer is also a book time.
It is. Get on the beach, you read a good book. So we are going to be talking about the best and worst book series adaptations that were made for theatrical release. So we're not just talking single books here. We're talking about multi-book series that were turned into theatrically released movies. And there's quite a few of them if you think about it. Just to throw a few out, Lord of the Rings, The Hunger Games, Dune,
Harry Potter,
Wizard of Oz,
Maze Runner. So there's quite a bit of stuff out there.
I'm not
so we
sure
want
Wizard of Oz counts. The two Wizard of Oz theatrical releases were done very separately. We're talking about book series that were made into movie series.
Well, Mike isn't completely far off though, because there was the Wizard of Oz, there was also a Return to Oz. So there are several.
Yes, but
really,
but they weren't interrelated. Is my argument.
Okay, but I was going to say too, though, if you really want to get in the weeds, there's a really shitty Oz remake of one of the other books that Riff Tracks covered.
Oh yeah.
I'm trying to keep it. Yeah, when I the more I thought about movies made from books, the list just got insanely long, and I was like, holy crap.
Right.
No, we can also talk about Patriot Games.
Oh God, the Jack Ryan series. So there's quite a bit that we can. There's quite a bit that we can talk about, right?
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
Cool. So we want to know from you, what is your favorite or least favorite book series theatrical adaptation? I really am curious about this. Are we including animated in this, Catherine? This is your idea, so I want to know. Are we including animated?
Let's save animated for another time.
Okay, so live action.
Because that's a whole other thing. The more I looked at it, we can have an entire manga episode.
Oh Jesus!
Well,
that's interesting. And legitimately, that's the one I tap. I finally, after 239 episodes, that's the one I tap on. I cannot speak to any of that.
Yeah, we can have one episode about Stephen King movies alone.
Oh God, yeah, that's true. So yeah, let us know what your thoughts are. We'll put this out on the socials, but if you hear us in advance and you want in on that, you can let us know by following us on Facebook at Geek Salad Podcast. We are on 10. We are on Blue Sky, and we are on Threads at Geek Salad Radio. So you can let us know your thoughts there. If you're a first-time listener to the show, hi. You could check out wherever you get your podcast, which is essentially where you just got it now. Linktree, our linktree.com/Geek Salad account has all of the areas that you can get it at, but you can check us out on Spotify, iTunes, Google Podcasts, and YouTube, where Mike and I also do our retro movie reviews, so you can check out our video channel as well as the full audio for this. So yeah, tons of different areas for you to interact with. I am really looking forward to hearing what y'all have to say about these book adaptations. And I think I got everything. Did I miss anything?
Nope, I think you got it all.
All right, fantastic. Well, anyway, folks, until next time, I'm Andy.
I'm Mike.
I'm Joe.
I'm Catherine.
Go forth and be nerdful. We'll talk to you later. We'll see you at the streaming service.
You're gonna need a bigger boat.